Hello and welcome to another BuildASoil YouTube video. Today we've got episode 14 from season 6 and we're finally transplanting the last plants. I've already done 3 of them over here and then this is the last one, and these are the ones from AWKID. And so this is the Hallison, and this, if you haven't been following along, is special because it takes the Branson's Royal Revenge and Branson name from an employee that still works here, and so that was adapted into it, and there was people working together as far as the lineage within this. It's got some royal, which is part of the BuildASoil story, just because of Ross Truth. Mandelbrot, the Emerald Cup, and Rootwise, and some of the connections that we had when we met, and so that's pretty cool. And then it's got the halitosis that we ran in another season, and I really like that because it was super funky, and that's from Covert. And then those are both keepers that were used to make this cross, and it's beautiful. It's in way too small of a container. These were feminized, so I just started them in smaller containers. We started them a little bit later, and of course they just ripped, just took off, and so we were just trying to feed them to keep them alive, and that's not ideal. We want to feed the soil. We want the soil to take care of the plants, so I'd like to transplant right away. And I did these 3 this morning because it takes a little bit of work on camera, and I want to be able to pay attention to detail instead of rushing to do the last 3 right after I shut the camera off. So I got it all set up. I want to go over exactly what I did, and to do that, we're going to be teaching a method called the BuildASoil Classic method. And this is going to allow you to adapt into different ways to run BuildASoil, because truly they're principles, they adapt, but a lot of times we get questions, well, how do I adapt it? How do I do it this way? How do I do it that way? And so instead of exposing you to, learning at the same time as you're adapting, we want to give you a set, like a recipe to follow. And if you follow that, you're going to get the same results we get. Then you can start to adapt and learn. And a lot of that is based on watering. So this one, we're going to do hand watering so you can learn. You can use some meters to kind of get dialed in, but I've also got a guide, and I'll show that to you. And this will be available at buildasoil.com. And so we've got the environmental protocol. And so you can just download this, so no reason to really show you everything, but that's the flyer. This is the BuildASoil Classic program we're gonna go over today. What's required? It's basically a water-only program with 15 gallon the minimum, setting you up for no-till. We're gonna run the minimum and talk about this. And because we're hand watering, we went with the BuildASoil Way watering protocol for hand watering. This will be different if you're on Blumat, or if you're on Trade-A-Grow or AUTOPOT or EARTHBOX. We'll have a watering protocol with common tips for each one of those so that you can be guided into success instead of trying to learn the hard way. Now, you're still gonna go through some learning, but one of the things that's important when you're working with organic soil is we're not just feeding them like hydroponic nutrients. So what we're trying to do is, instead of water solubles, even instead of getting the biology just to get it water soluble, we'd like to have many different levels where the plant can eat from its own buffet, choose according to its own needs, and take care of itself so we don't have to be perfect on the balance. We still start with balanced soil because that has to begin the process, but I'm going to show you today how to kind of set up that buffet in the mulch layer, take advantage of some of the processes that aren't as often talked about in organic gardening, whereby plants can take up nutrients. And so all of that with these guides, it should be really easy for you. And so I'll reference them a little bit, but when you go to buildasoil.com under education, you can print these guides out. It's free information so that you can take what we're doing here on camera. Instead of taking a million notes, you can get it condensed down to what we've been able to produce over time as far as sharing what we do in here. And I think it's easier to duplicate that way. So let's start with the BuildASoil Classic, and then I'm gonna get started because I've already done the other 3 and it's super easy to show. On here, there's some tips and it goes through steps, kind of like if I was in person telling you what to do. And then the schedule is super easy. It's just clean water, and it kind of goes through the 5 to 10% rule, which is based on our hand watering protocol. And it goes you over some common tips, and then it goes over all of the cost and how much it costs. And so we'll discuss some of that because this will change over time. But the idea is that it's down to $12.50 per plant once you've got your initial round out of the way, once you've paid for the soil, you've got it all going, and that can really reduce your cost versus having to go to the dispensary. So I was always evaluating that, and I wanted to kind of discuss some of that with you as far as cost of production in your own house. But today, what we're gonna go over is getting the container ready, and it's part of this process. And so I don't wanna show you this on camera. You can download it, but essentially it says this is an optional pre-moisten. I wanted to talk about it because I just basically take the bags on camera, and you'll see me, I'll dump them right into my container. And the problem is that if you're brand new, you may not be able to judge the initial moistness of the soil, and then you end up maybe over or under watering because you don't want to dig in there afterwards and find out. So you can just dump it in the container, you can water, and then when you're transplanting, you can dig down and kind of see, okay, was it really dry when I thought I watered a lot? Okay, I must not have watered enough. I'll water a little more. Or is it kind of wet? And you're like, all right, no more water. That's one way to do it. The other way that I highlight here is the optional pre-moisten. You can take a tub like this, take the lid off, dump 1 bag of soil in it, and then you can just put your water in there. You can water with the Rootwise and the Q-Yaha, which are the 2 products that we're gonna be using for the BuildASoil Classic. Rootwise is the classic microbial. We'll talk about how that helps widen that margin of success and narrow that margin for error. And so the Rootwise helps with that. This is a wetting agent that also helps you get everything wet for the first time. So when you put it in the tub and you add those to your water, you can spray it in there, but the best part is for instant gratification, you're able to mix it, and that really homogenizes the moisture level, evenly distributes it throughout there, and then you can do the squeeze test. And so if you squeeze it, and let's say you only have 1 bag of soil, do half, then do the second half. Because if you over wet it, you always have a little bit drier soil to add back to it. But when you squeeze it and no water beads and falls down your wrist or drips out, that's about the ideal moisture level, but it needs to stay clumped together, okay? If you wet it a little bit and you squeeze it and it falls apart, it's probably not wet enough yet. If you go a little further and it squeezes and just dumps water out, you've gone a little too far. And that's really a good moisture test. As far as the meters, we'll be talking about Blumat, and we're gonna be talking about the eco wits so that I can relay some information to you. When I do the squeeze test, we can get a reading and see about where that's at percentage-wise in moisture based on just the squeeze test, and that'll kind of translate some information. But the idea being, when you put it in a tub, when you add that moisture, no matter if you got a bag that's been sitting at the store for a while, shipped directly from us, or whether you made it yourself and you're just gonna be using some fresh today, it allows you to check thoroughly the moisture so there's no dry pockets. Make sure that it's ideal so you're really confident before you plant it up. When you're more experienced, you can just dump and go, but I don't want you to be troubleshooting later wondering that I have a dry pocket, like what happened, okay? So that's one method. I'm probably just gonna dump in the pot today, but I wanted to discuss it because that's part of the beginner BuildASoil Classic method. Next from there, it says transfer your moistened soil to the grassroots container. Grassroots fabric pots. That's what we're using. It's a 15-gallon. I've got it right here. And for those of you that don't know, they basically invented this living soil liner. It's in there. It doesn't go all the way to the bottom. And so that gives you some room here to breathe and not go anaerobic. And it drives the roots downward so you can bottom water. It's got a lot of really cool features packed in this tiny container. And so for 15 gallons, I know I call it small. Most people say that is huge. But part of the BuildASoil Classic is we want to leverage our footprint. We've got 4x4 in this tent. Ideally, we'd have all the floor covered with soil to maximize production in this space and to keep it easier to no-till. The more root room that you have, the easier it is for your plants to take advantage of all their opportunity to feed in a balanced way according to their needs. When we start to get them a little bit more root bound, we're shutting off some of their explorative roots. If we haven't built a mulch layer, they can't be eating on their own as well, and they might get locked out. Then you have to look for water-soluble additions like compost tea, amino acids, Build-A-Bloom, soon to come to Build-A-Veg. Those are helpful, but we don't want to become dependent upon those. To me, that's like having a protein shake. You don't want to live off that. You want to eat real food. That's the way to be healthy. And you don't want to eat processed junk either. I mean, we all know if you're buying some processed food, it's not the way to live. Real food is singular ingredients that you can read. Same in the soil here. To be able to tap into that, 15 gallons is about the minimum starting point. 30s fill this up really nicely. 4x4 bed, 3x3 bed. You're starting to take advantage of more soil per canopy, and that's one of the tenets of the BuildASoil Way Classic program. 15-gallon minimum, go big as floor space allows. Hand water, and then mulch is organic straw, which I have right here. I've actually pre-moistened it to make it a little bit less dusty and easy to work with, so I like to do that. I've got a big box of it here. And then the cover crop, we're gonna use 12 seed cover crop blend. And so I've got a bag of that. I might have to go grab it. I don't see it sitting here. And then worms, I'm not gonna add any right now. You can add them now or later. I suspect there's gonna be some worms showing up from the compost I'm adding anyways, but I've got a worm bin, so I can go steal a few. I can add a few per container. I'll show you when I do it. Ideally, 5 to 10 worms per container, and red wigglers are ideal, but it doesn't have to be. You want composting worms. And then the top dressing, craft blend and Build-A-Flower. It's a well-rounded amendment plus compost. I'll give you 2 options for how to do that here, and that's that's really the BuildASoil way classic. When it gets to instructions, what we want to do is moisten the soil. Ideally, we'd have this soil moistened and sitting here for like until tomorrow, and it would really come to that warmth. It would be really ready to receive your transplants and everything would be ideal. But because this has been in the same room, the soil's nice and warm, I'm just gonna run with it. But if you do have time and you're not in a rush, you can plant it up, you can moisten it, and then you can wait a day. Tomorrow you can plant. Make sure all the moisture, dig down in there, make sure it's really right. Otherwise, a way to kind of help circumvent that is to do the tub method like I mentioned, so you know the moisture is right and you don't have to wait. Something about getting your soil moist and then getting it in a warm environment, it starts to really come to life. But besides that, we're gonna add a root wise. You know, there's lots of little tricks to this. So lastly, transplant your seedling or your clone into your new container of soil. Tuck it in and gently moisten around the transplant with Microbe Complete and the Yaha 60 or any wetting agent. And then we're gonna top dress with a 1/4 to 1/2 cup of craft blend around the plant, not directly on the stalk. I'll show you that. We're gonna cover this top dressing with a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch layer of our Build-A-Flower top dress, which is compost, and a couple of amendments. And then we're gonna sprinkle 1 teaspoon of cover crop around the plant, not directly against the stalk, and gently use our fingers to rake the seeds in so that they have good contact with the compost. After that, I'm gonna cover it with straw. I'm gonna moisten it all. That's what I've done on all these, and I'm gonna show you all of that process right now. So let's get going. We'll talk about environment in another episode. I just wanna get transplanted. So if you've got a bag of our soil and you're looking at it, on the top, you're gonna see a side that has a stitching and a side that has a plastic tab with stitching. You're gonna grab that piece of plastic with string and pull. That allows you to unlock the tear strip and you don't have to use scissors. Totally up to you, but in my house, I can never find scissors. I bought like 7 pairs, put them in the drawer, they're gone. It is what it is. If you're like me, those are helpful. So I open the bag. I'm gonna go ahead and make sure I keep it a little bit sealed and line it up. Dump it in. These trays that I put it in, they pretty much match the bottom. I usually like to go slightly larger, but these were just matching enough where it fit in the tent really well, and we had them in the store, so those are what I'm using right now. You can go with the bigger, it'll just create a little more space between the plants. I'm probably not gonna be bottom watering here. We'll talk about that if the opportunity arises. If the plants get really big, we'll discuss how you can bottom water using the trays. Otherwise, I've got the soil in, it looks beautiful. What I'm gonna do is spread it around to the sides, make sure that I've picked up the sides and that it's kind of evenly distributed in there. No matter which kind of bag you have, just make sure that it's pressed around, tamped down a little. It's got plenty of drainage in there. I'm not like mashing it down. Then I'll get my next bag. 15 gallons is 2 cubic feet. And those are just slightly larger, so this will fit perfect. The thing with volume is it fluffed, compressed, right? So that's why there's so much difference between volume versus something else. I like to dump it in while it's all fluffy and then compress it down. And the water's gonna do some of that compression as well as soon as we water it. So I don't want to spill any. Got really close on the edge there. That's why I compressed that first bag down, because 2 cubic feet will overflow this thing if you don't compress it just a little bit, because that's 15 gallons. Gonna move this around, compress it into the side so the bag's gonna like have nice structure, no like air pockets or dry pockets or anything. There, that's nice. Now I can dig out room for my transplant, but first I think what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna water this in. That way I can do the double check after I've watered for a minute before I do the transplant. So in here is just the Yaha 60. That's a high saponin product. We have soap nuts. We have the Yucca Thermex 70. That's high in saponin. Many plants have saponins. That is the bark from a tree, and it's sustainably harvested and produced, and it works really well. We also have the Rootwise, which I've talked about a million times. It's our favorite product. And there we go. So fresh out the bag on a 15-gallon pot, 3/4 of a gallon is probably the most I'd put on. That's about 5% by volume. You can learn those numbers in our BuildASoil Way watering protocol. If it was on the drier side, 1.5 gallons might be the most I put at any one time. I would check for runoff at that point. You could wait a few minutes, come back maybe 15 minutes later, see how the water's progressed through. With fresh soil, peat moss can be a little bit hydrophobic. It can just maybe run through and then wick back up. This soil looked really nice and moist. So I want to make sure that I'm pushing it deep enough, as it can seem like when you're misting it that you're watering a lot and then you dig in there and it's only like 2 inches deep. So I'm just going to keep watering. Okay, I'll do a little check when I transplant. The moisture was already pretty nice on the soil, so it may have looked like I added a lot, but it wasn't much. And then once I transplant, I'll do a check, and then we're gonna do the final layers here. I'll do it quickly. It's super basic. That's why the BuildASoil Classic method is so awesome. This is setting the foundation, and it's setting a buffet up for the feeder roots, because you have to get the soil test balance right when you first transplant. They're gonna go off what's water soluble. Very quickly after that, they're gonna establish a relationship with biology, and there's a process called rhizophagy that the plants go through that allow them to kind of farm those microbes and work together. There's another process called endocytosis, which I've been talking about a little bit more. I'm fascinated by it, and it's where the plants can actually eat. And so you set up this buffet and you allow them to intelligently go after their food, as opposed to always having to keep the balance perfect. It's a much easier way to go. And I think that's why no-till growers have so much success. They get this cycle going through that mulch layer of life, so much life, from the worms and all the little small orthopods and everything breaking it down in that layer. I think creates something so much better than having bare soil and then trying to feed organic nutrients. It's a completely different methodology, and that's why this part of the process is super important. We're really building something different here, and it's important that you connect to that. That's why we talk about mulch a lot. And in the forest layer, I mean, there's lots of deep mulch, and worms are very impactful. There's lots we could talk about. I'm trying not to make a huge tangent, but this part's important. So let's get going. Oh, that's nice. It's good moisture. So down about 4 inches, it starts to get to that regular out of the bag texture. That'll start to slowly seep through, so I'll be able to water a little more today without any risk of over watering. You can see it just air prunes through the bag, so there's constantly producing new roots, and there's old roots. And so you just gotta keep up with watering these. They dry down so quick. Now they're gonna explode with growth. There we go, AWKID. Okay, I like to move the soil back around, kind of press it down with both my hands around it, make sure it's sealed. And then I like to water it to get that transplant nice and sealed in. The water running around it is gonna mix and interact between the two soil surfaces and integrate them together. It's got the root wise in it, right in the root zone. It's exactly what we wanna do. Okay, now I'm gonna grab the craft blend. This is a mixture of all of our favorite organic amendments. You can do a 1/4 to a 1/2 cup. So I'm just gonna eyeball it. That's in that 1/4 to 1/2 cup range. And then I'm just gonna go around the plant and evenly spread it kind of in a circle around there, because we're working in a round pot and I don't want it right on the up against the stalk, as it's gonna create a lot of biological activity. And that's gonna create so much of a process that there's so many more ways the plant can feed, and it can start to adapt and send its feeder roots up to this layer. That's why we call it the buffet. So instead of just leaving it there in a pile, I actually like to work it in, kind of like raking it almost with my fingers. And this spreads it out. It gets contact with moisture on everything, and it makes sure it's not gonna make just like a cake that's impenetrable to the water. It's gonna make it spread out evenly and give lots of surface area for the microbial life. Okay, so now that that's done, we have another layer that I like to add. We've got our Build-A-Flower, and I've got just a scoop in here. You can see what it looks like. It's got a lot of moisture, and it's just teeming with life from some of the amendments and all the compost that's in there. And so I'm gonna spread this, and it's gonna create like a barrier to the soil, and it's gonna protect it, it's gonna feed it, and it's gonna help break down with all the biology in here, all those nutrients we just added. Now, one tip is you can make something like this on your own. You can also integrate your whole top dressing. You can just grab a 5-gallon bucket, mix your worm castings, your compost with your craft blend or whatever amendments, mix them all together, top dress it all at once. It's totally up to you. We just have these two products. This is oftentimes how I personally use it instead of having the extra step of mixing it. So that's what I'm showing you today. To me, this is easier. What I've found is they both work. Mixing it perfectly, integrating it like a rake, and covering. The idea is I want to bury those, kind of cover them with this, so those stay for sure underneath the surface where the microbes can really break it down, and I feed the Edifon in the soil. You're gonna have worms come up and work it, and it's just beautiful. So getting it started, one. Really, it's the measurement's like a 1/4 inch across the top, kind of so you're just covering it like mulch. So the number of scoops doesn't necessarily matter, it depends on your container size. Might be some clumps, just kind of break them up. That's from the moisture and how it compresses in the bag on the pallet. Nice, so I got a really thin layer all the way around. Now the roots can choose whether they want to feed up there or not, as opposed to being forced, where soil balance is so important. That's why we do soil testing. But if they can drink from below, or they can get water access from areas of the soil that aren't full of nutrients like the mulch layer, the plants now can pick and choose, as opposed to all the water being right in the zone that must be balanced. So that's just one way to look at soil testing, and I think it's fascinating. So now that we've done that, I'm gonna go grab the cover crop, because that's one of the last portions here that I wanna do before I put the straw on. This is our 12 seed cover crop blend. I've got a moisture meter I'll discuss. You can see some different height in the plants. I chose different looking ones to get a variety from those seeds to see what they offer. Something a little more from each parent, right? And so we're hoping that maybe this taller one might be a little more halitosis leaning versus the Bransons. But either way, it'll be interesting. We tried to choose for something slightly different versus exactly the same, so we can sort of search through that pack, even though we're only running 4 seeds. A lot of times at home, that's all you can do. You can't just go pop 1,000 seeds to find something interesting. So good breeders and good environment, good soil, it makes it really, really fun. About a teaspoon, you can really go, honestly, the measurement's difficult. It's more like spreading it all around here so that you get very good fast germination. And between a teaspoon and a tablespoon, or even more, you could dump a whole bunch on there. And even that don't germinate, it's almost like seed meal. It's like a good fertilizer for the soil anyways, because it'll feed the microbial life, it'll feed all the little critters in there. But what I'm gonna do is just grab a small amount here. It's about a tablespoon, and I'm gonna sprinkle it around. Get it evenly all the way around, and that looks really good. You could double that up just to make sure you get like a good stand right away to chop and drop, because all this that grows, we're actually gonna chop it and drop it back into the soil. And so not only can we just feed like water-soluble ions, the second level would be feeding nutrients that have enzymes like the malted barley seed, and feed nutrients that have secondary possibilities like the chitin that's in the crustacean meal. So we choose ingredients for really many special reasons. But ultimately, what's so cool about cover crop, and you can wild harvest the fast growing tips of plants around your property if you know they're pest free. But we can grow cover crop right here. We can harvest it when it's young, and we can return living cells to the soil. And there is a biological process that happens where these living cells can break down from within the plant and do other jobs. It's almost like they're transformers as far as how biology works. I remember when I was learning about this from the EM1 and some of the facultative anaerobes, and it just blows my mind. So I hope you're just as interested. You don't have to look through a microscope. There's millions more unnamed microbes that we just don't understand than we do. But knowing enough to harness it, I think, is important. So I've got the cover crop in. We're gonna grow on tap living tissue microbes, so to speak, through this plant matter right here in the soil. I'm gonna do the same thing I did with the craft blend. I'm gonna work this in a little bit for a different reason. For the craft blend, I wanted it to break down and be plant available. But for this, I just want it to have good contact with the soil, like I'm raking it in, so that the seeds do their job and they pull all the moisture in without drying out. I'm not really burying them, I'm just raking it around a little bit so that there's good contact with that build-a-flower. That's what it looks like. Now, because I just top dressed, I may not get a perfect stand of cover crop. You know, germinating right into that nutrient may slow them down a little bit. Most likely not. Otherwise, they are gonna get blocked out by the canopy. We're looking to just get enough to chop and drop. It's not really a big deal. Some people start their cover crop early and they put like a cup as a placeholder where they're going to transplant, get it all going, and then they do that later. That's fine, just make sure you do some chop and dropping. Either way, the idea is for this to be the main plant and the cover crop to be forming a function for it, not taking over. And that's really how we integrate living mulch, chop and dropping, and in-between cycle cover cropping into this type of system to keep it no-till, so that once you set this process up, once you've invested into this, you keep this in place, maybe not forever, but probably as long as required for your growing habits. As a hobby, you might change your desire to do a different system in the next 5 or 10 years, but you can do cycle after cycle after cycle right here from this investment, keeping the environment good, choosing plants wisely, and following the BuildASoil way. So the last step, got the straw, and then we've got more to do in the 10x10. The 10x10 was transplanted yesterday, and it's already stunning, but I have some stuff to talk about in there. So I like to moisten the straw. It's already moistened here. And to make as minimal mess, I kind of strip off some of the stuff that's easy to fall. And then I put it in one direction, pull it around in a circle. The idea is not to make it perfect, because we don't want to block the cover crop from coming up through it. We want it to just be scattered like nature would kind of drop it. Now, this isn't that nutritive. It's more about providing a skin, a layer, a carbon layer on top that will eventually combine with the green cover crop that we chop and drop and have a balanced carbon to nitrogen ratio, feeding the microbials, feeding the edifauna of the soil. That's really what we're trying to do. It's like we have a billion pets in there. We're trying to keep happy. They take care of the plant knows what it's doing. Dialed in. Why would we want to be in full control? Especially when like there's always something we don't know about. There's always something we're learning more about. And it's fun to just kind of trust it. Now, indoors like this, I get it. We got to do some of the stuff. Okay. You can take scissors, go around and kind of clip these wild ones, or you can just take some time and work them down. Either way, this is already nice and pre-moistened. And I didn't do it too thick where the cover crop won't go through. If you do it really thick, it's just going to block it all out. So Masanobu Fukuoka talked about that, putting the straw down, and that's part of why we do it, the One Straw Revolution. It's an amazing book if you haven't read it. There's like free downloads everywhere. Check it out. Like, that book was way more interesting than I anticipated. It really helped start BuildASoil. But through that process, he talked about how some of the neighboring farms would put straw based on his recommendation, and they'd line it perfectly, almost like building a straw floor on the soil, and that would block a lot of what needs to happen for germination. So don't do that. Everything looks great now. The last step is to water it enough. I've got an EcoWhip moisture meter in the top. That's what this display is reading. Normally that display is on your phone. You don't need to get that meter, but some people are like, I don't want to have to look on my phone. You can get that, and that'll read one of those meters. You can actually move it around and pair it with each meter and get a different reading visually without having your app. But you know, it's best to pair to one meter and leave it paired. So I just use that to get a visual, talk about it on camera. 35% is pretty wet. When it comes to the Blumat, that's like in that 40 millibar range. And so that's considered really wet as far as the Blumat, but that's how I like things. But you'll notice there's no runoff. So it's not to the point where the soil cannot hold any more water. It's not at full capacity. And that's important. So I'm gonna irrigate this. I'm just gonna water it in. This is now putting microbe complete along with all of those cover crops, seeds. Now, all those thousands of seeds I just put in, they're gonna be popping enzymes and busting loose and using some of that magic of the beginning of life to start to work into that soil. And that is what we really truly, in my opinion, is living soil. Lots of plants, diversity. It'll start to come to life. We'll add the worms in there, and over time, these beds get better and better. So I know I'm gonna need to come back and add like another half gallon, but I'd like to get to the rest of the tent. So I'm gonna seal this up. All right, so now we're here in the 10 by 10, and it is bright in here, it's warm in here, everything's popping off. We are gonna do a full environmental episode. I'm waiting for the new NIWA to get here so I can plug it in, set it up, and use their CO2 sensor, and that'll allow me to slow down. And instead of doing all this work plus that work, I can slow down and just come in here and view how beautiful it is and teach about the environment and setting it up properly. Right now I've got humidity blowing at me because we opened up the tent. It feels really nice in here. That's the type of environment that promotes really fast growth from the plants. So we want to get there. It's one of the most important parts of this process, so don't overlook it. But for today, we've got the Strawberry Deluxe, and both these are from Dominion Seed Company. These are also Strawberry Deluxe. So this whole quadrant, if you've been following, are from Dominion, the Strawberry Deluxe. And we'll talk more about that, but today what's important is, we already did the transplant, you saw that. But now what I'm doing is going through and putting the Build-A-Flower, putting the craft blend, just like we talked about in the other tent. Now the BuildASoil Classic is water only. I may end up using some supplements in here and I'll talk about it. But the BuildASoil Classic is still the fundamental. We want to build that mulch layer, just like we've always done with the EARTHBOXes. We're gonna do the same on the 4x4 bed, on the 30 gallons, or I'm sorry, the 15 gallons. And we're also gonna do it here on the Tray to Grow. Now I've already done the one in the Dominion soil. You can see the straw back there. In my opinion, it's beautiful. I've not cleaned up yet because I'm gonna make more of a mess. Afterwards, we'll clean up. In one of the next episodes, we're gonna hook up the reservoir, but I'm gonna give it probably 3, 4, 5 days. I think it's best to get plants established before we start bottom watering. These are bigger, so they probably could do it. I'm really stoked to use this grassroots for running on the fly with it, for making these beds that fit the thing, to get all of it going in the BuildASoil way. Really, thank you. I'm excited for it. So, EARTHBOX, I'm gonna set up. I'm gonna do the same thing on both of these, and then we're gonna close it out by hooking up the last Blumat, which will just take a few seconds. We'll discuss it, wrap this episode up. So let me get started. Same as last time, I'm just gonna grab a little bit of craft blend, 1/4 cup to a 1/2 cup. I'm gonna do this one first since it's right here. I'm gonna sprinkle some in this area, some around the other side, just kind of evenly get it through here. I'm gonna wiggle it in a little bit, just like we did on the other container. This, you can see, breaks up that harder surface from watering, gets it moved around so that it can break down properly and feed those feeder roots. Now, it's so cool about the EARTHBOX and why I think I'm excited about the tray to grow is this has a reservoir of water underneath, like a few gallons of water underneath it. So while you're loading it with heavy food on the top, now what can happen is it can access clean water down below anytime it wants. So it doesn't have to like forcibly filter the water that's drinking and like try not to absorb nutrients that are water soluble. It can just go to the feeder zone where it wants it, and it can send water roots down into the reservoir and get clean water. That's part of why we see boosted success here, is we're not having all of the roots in that area, so that's so important that there's perfect balance at all times. Even if you crush the soil test and get it perfect, which a lot of times you're always adding something, waiting for it to catch up, trying to create balance, you hit minimums, maximums. Even when that's happening, if you have clean water below and you have good food up top and you leverage all those biological processes, not just the chemical balance side, you can slay it. And so the EARTHBOXes have been kind of the early indication of that. More moisture, food up top, clean water below, and mimicking that in other styles has proved to be really fruitful. So I got the craft blend down, and now I'm gonna cover that with the BuildAFlower. Now they're all looking good. A couple of them I'll show you in a minute. We're getting a little bit freaked out in their small container and they dry down and they got a little bit of yellow edges here. Immediately upon transplant, you can see it wasn't a lack of nutrient, it was just root bound, and all the new growth is just looking so much better. Across the board, they're so happy to be transplanted. One day, no transplant shock, immediately they're taking hold. Part of that is getting that moisture level right, which is, you know, a decent level of moisture. I can give you a reading, but over here on these, the tray to grow, it was a little bit light, so I put a Blumat in there and I watered a little bit heavier, and we got to about 40, 42 on the Blumat, and man, I really like it. And that's about 32, 33% on those eco widths. I'll talk about that because we've got a new one that measures deep. I don't really need to use those, but it's helpful in me communicating to you what I'm doing. And so in that regard, we really do like to use them. Okay, so now I've built the mulch layer. Now I can put some cover crop in here. Then I can come cover this whole thing up and kind of decompose that cover crop as living tissue right into this mulch layer. But I'm gonna be pulling off a lot of leaves, and I'm gonna be setting that up with some of the plant's own tissue as it is. So it doesn't have to be just the cover crop. The EARTHBOXes are a little bit smaller volume of soil, and so I don't use the full barrage of principles in an EARTHBOX like I'm hoping to use in the tray to grow. That's part of why I'm so excited about the tray to grow, is the EARTHBOX kind of forces you to choose between this plastic bucket that you cover with plastic versus if you go the raw mulch, you don't have as much capacity with the mounding. So the tray to grow being bigger and sub-irrigated, I'm thinking we're gonna be able to take advantage of cover crop, mulching, bottom watering, like the full spectrum. And that unlocks many different methods of as far as plant nutrition and absorbing their food. So I'll just bury that leaf there. We'll do more of that as we start to maintain the plant. That's all I'm gonna do, no cover crop in this one. I do have to get a plastic cover, and I have to cover that. You can see this one's already done, and it allows to block the light and keep all of this under here nice and moist. You can see that I've already done it to this one. So that's what has to happen here. I'm gonna do this and talk about the moisture meters, because that's important. And I'm gonna grab some craft blend. I've got one eco wit in the surface. I'm gonna pull it out and I will put that back in when we're done. I've also got another one, their new one, that you can bury all the way to the bottom. So I have this one facing this way. So the meter is just like this, down in the bottom. And it doesn't have the green battery compartment on it. That's right here. And now it gives me a reading. And they have like an attachment so you can put it on a stake. I'm just gonna put it right here. And we're at 32% on the eco wit on the bottom. And on the top, I think we're at 33 or 34%. I'll give you the readings as we go throughout the grow. But I'm gonna cover that back up. I'm gonna put my craft blend down. Make sure there's some kind of all over this container. I'm gonna rake it in with my fingers just like I did in the other beds. I did add another half bag or bag of soil in here to top them up a little bit, as I was able to compress them down and push the sides out a little bit. That's gonna happen over time, so I just kind of started the process so I could fit more in here. It bowed it out slightly, but it made it really nice and it holds a good volume of soil. It's part of why I like those fabric containers. So very happy so far. I've got that worked in. I'm gonna grab the cover crop now. Same thing, we're just getting a small amount, evenly putting it around. I'm not gonna put it right against the stalk because that's gonna get shaded out pretty quickly. I don't wanna compete. I just want it to work the soil and feed everything in there. That was probably a tablespoon. Now I'm gonna gently work this in. That way there's good contact here in the moist compost that we put on top. Oh, did I not put the BuildAFlower? That's why it looks like that. This will still work, it's just I forgot to put the BuildAFlower layer. It's like Groundhog Day, I've done so many of these. All right. This will still work. I'm just gonna make sure that I don't completely bury all that cover crop. So ideally, I would put this down first, then put the seed on top. But I'm just gonna spread this, and it's fine. I can always add a little bit more later as I'm chopping and dropping. There's gonna be plenty of room in here. You could even build a cover for this. I know there's a group doing that. I'm gonna wanna reach out to them, see if I can carry their products, but you don't need to do a cover. That's what the mulch is for. So there's many different ways of doing this. It's just that on the EARTHBOX, there's not as much room. All right, now what I'm doing is I'm gonna kind of rake it around so that it exposes some of that cover crop, gets good moisture contact, everything I would do just like before. And now we're done. Now the last part is the straw. You can go ahead and just put this in. I'll put it about where it was. And I can bury that in the straw too. And I'm gonna spread it out so it's not covering all that cover crop too evenly. The straw goes a long way. We don't need to add tons of it. Outside, you can add 6 inches deep to really protect the soil and really have a thick mulch layer. You can check out the Ruth Stout No Work Gardening. She discusses some of that, and I think it's awesome. But in here, we want the cover crop to at least grow through. And we want something a little more nutritious for a lot of our top dress because we're not exposed to the elements like outside. Okay, I can go through and clean that up and tuck it in just a little bit better. At least it's in there now. What I have to do over here is follow that same exact thing. And I don't want to spend the time to do it on camera because I want to get to the Blumat. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to sprinkle craft blend, not right on the plant, but around the edges. And then I'm going to go through with the Build-A-Flower. I'm going to spread some out on here to build up a mulch layer for the feeder roots. Not as imperative here because I've been building this one over and over. We just cover cropped huge. We just chopped and dropped. There's a lot in that surface that can suffice for the feeder roots. So I'm just going to be pretty gentle over here as it doesn't really require as much for 2 plants in such a huge bed. It has so much room to send roots out and keep feeding and feeding that I'll do a gentle amount. I'll probably do the same amount per plant as I just did with those. And then I'll put a little Build-A-Flower around, and then I'll put the cover crop everywhere to help move the moisture in the bed evenly. That really helps move moisture all over this bed. Then I'm gonna cover that cover crop obviously with the straw, just like I did with these. Later we can chop and drop it. We'll talk about all that stuff as we go, including the environment. So getting closer. So in the next coming episodes, environment, scrog screens, and managing canopy, because 2 plants is not enough to fill these quadrants without some techniques. So we'll discuss that as well. Okay, I've got one more plant to do, and I actually don't really need to do it on camera, but what I want to do on camera is the Blumat. So I'm trying to figure out how to get situated here. So I've got 2 plants over here, and they're both in the 3.0 soil, or one's in the 3.0, one's in the Dominion, but they're both in 15-gallon grassroots. And we're using these rings with the Blumats. So they've got a dripper built into a drip tube, and it's hardened into this it's like put into this harder plastic. You can slip your plant through, and then this is where it connects. And so this is how easy it is. This one's already hooked up, put it in the mulch. We did everything the same as the others. I've got that Blumat meter, and you can see where we're at. So we're at 58. I want more moisture, but the way these are set up is to wait a little while. You can see the plant looks pretty good. I've got this one irrigate a little more. I'm gonna set this up. I'll show you how to dial that in on the Blumat according to how you want it. We're gonna follow what they say to do, but I'm also gonna hand water a little bit more just to kick this kicked off, and then this will keep up the rest of the way. So I gotta set up the entire process as far as, I might as well just do it so I can put this on top instead of sprinkling everything on top, but really it doesn't matter. Nice, this 1 cubic foot bag went a long way. Really happy, I did a whole bunch of plants. All right, that's plenty. Now I got a whole layer in here. It's covered, full of goodies in here to start that process. Then I'm gonna use the cover crop. This is a big helper here doing this. It kicks it all off. We're using like the secret enzymes of life in the seeds, right with all those amendments, right in the compost. Really the roots are just gonna wanna go there, tap into that life. Okay, now I could cover it with straw now, we're ready for that, but I'm just gonna put this on first and I'll bury the whole thing. So I'll put this around, and I'm not really gonna bury it yet, I'm just putting it right there. And then what I'm gonna do is go turn the pump off so there's no pressure, because this is on a pump drive. So I'm gonna just turn it, I'm just gonna block it really quick so I can cut into the line and then put my next Blumat carrot in there, which I have right here. And so what I mean by that is, this is gonna go in the soil and connect to my main water line that has pressure on it right now. So I'm gonna take the pressure off so I can plug this in, and I'll show you that. This will go to my Blumat that I just showed you, the carrot that's gonna be actually in charge of watering this container and making sure that it stays at optimum level. So all I need to do is take some scissors and plug that in. Here's what I need to connect. I'm gonna pull this through just a little bit. You can see this is set on the blue line. So I'm actually gonna, while on camera, set this up. So that's according to 15 PSI. We're on a pressure system, which makes it super easy. So we're gonna go back to between the blue line on this green mark here. There's a pink line. I'm gonna go right in the middle and set it right there, and I'll tell you how it performs. I'll just put this key over here for now. And then I'm gonna go bury this. I'm gonna do it on this side so it's close to the water line, but see the distance I have the Blumat right here, the meter. It's not on the edge of the container, but it's not right in the root zone. I'm gonna do it halfway in between. Try not to rip up the root ball that I planted in here. And then this tip is just gonna plug right into that part of the ring where I showed you. That's all. This will read the moisture deep down in the container. When it dries out, it's gonna pull water from inside this tube, which is gonna open the ball and it's gonna allow water to go out. When the water finally saturates and it blocks off the tension, it fills with water again, shuts it off. So it's depending upon the plant's needs, and I'm using the ring to water around evenly instead of just right where this is taking a reading. So I'll put that in there. There you go. I'll adjust my ring, pull a little bit more slack out, and this is gonna go on. You probably can't see it, but I'm just putting this on. I gotta use two hands. Get it on there and really work it so that it goes all the way to the bottom of that barb. So now I can take this ring here and I can make sure it's kind of level and push down into the soil so that it's even. Okay, that looks really nice. Now the last step I'm gonna do is splice this in there. So I've got the little piece. I'm gonna connect it onto here, so as soon as I plug it in, I can go turn the pump back on. If you're using gravity, same thing. You just kind of turn off your quarter shutoff valve from the gravity bucket so it doesn't start dumping your bucket on the floor. Hook this up. When you're done, you open the valve back again. I love the Blumats, but you can see even as I talk about this, the EARTHBOX and the tray to grow are a lot easier, but this is a lot more adaptable to commercial and to larger spaces, so it kind of depends on what you're doing. Okay, I cut it. I'm gonna plug it in. Super easy. There we go, connected. Drop that on the floor. Now everything's ready to water. I'm gonna go turn the pressure back on. The cap's already dialed according to the moisture in there. It's not gonna water until it gets probably closer to 75, and we're at 57, so there'll be a little bit more dry down. I can come mist the top just to get that cover crop nice and moist, and then before it gets too dry, the Blumat's gonna start firing based on the setting that I put on that cap there. So that's it. I'm stoked. I gotta put some straw over this, but that's it. I feel like that's enough for us to wrap up the episode. I got into a lot today. So mainly what I wanted to do today was go over the BuildASoil Classic, show you how to set up those 15 gallons for hand watering, show you how that adapts into kind of the foundation around here. I didn't want to document every step, but I really wanted to teach those principles. So today what I've got to do, I got to get this bed all covered in straw and put the craft blend and the Build-A-Flower down. I'm not going to do it quite as thick, like we already talked about that, but those plants are looking so good. I'm really happy. We'll talk about the lighting, the environment in a coming episode. We're gonna do a deep dive on it, make sure we spend the time. Otherwise, everything's in its home. I gotta put the cover on, few last things, but we're basically ready. It's like day one of veg, essentially. And we'll keep tracking that because there's 2 plants. We're gonna veg for slightly longer than usual, and we'll start really widening the canopy out and talking about all of those things, giving us more time to talk about the environment before we flip to flower. So I'd imagine we'll veg for at least 30 days. But who knows? We'll track along the way. We'll talk about it together. If you've got questions about this episode, about the Blumat stuff, the BuildASoil Classic method, the watering, any of these things, please drop them in here. We can read those questions. We'll use it for an FAQ video. Otherwise, subscribe, like, tell your friends about these videos. And until next time, we'll see you on the next BuildASoil video.